I was in World War II, and I think about that in little flashes, things that I saw in the war, for instance, on Omaha Beach. And that was a lot of dead guys in one little place, I'll tell you. So I think about that. I think about the Battle of the Bulge. That's another activity I have. I'm president of the Southern California chapter of the Battle of the Bulge, Veterans of the Battle of the Bulge. And that's primarily because nobody else wants to do it. Some of them had done it, and others maybe are not capable of doing it, or they don't want to do it. So I've been kind of stuck in that spot for 3 years now. I'm trying to find somebody else.
When you talk about the war, are those the flashes that you have? Are those things that have come to your mind later in life, or is that something that you've always had and you've tried to suppress? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, at the time I was rather numb. I'm more emotional about Omaha Beach now, outwardly, than I was at the time. But later on, I went through a long period of not thinking about the war very much at all and not talking about it. And then when you get older, you begin to realize that it's the most important experience of your life. Now, when I think back on it, I was involved, not heroically, I was just involved in the biggest single event, which was the invasion of Normandy, with apologies to all the guys in the South Pacific who did a tremendous job. And the biggest event of the 20th century was World War II. So that's my opinion. I mean, landing on the moon was another very big event. But if you're talking about a single thing, I would say that's the most important. So you begin to think, I was involved in that, and you also get to the point where you think, I worked hard, I was kind of buried in the business, I wasn't even paying a lot of attention to the outside world, even though there were important things like Vietnam going on. And they're not as important as you think they are at the time. And the reason you think it's important is that you're fully immersed in it and enjoying it. And also, you got to make a living. So
you have more time to reflect and be contemplative.
I have more time to reflect, and I also look at my life and say, I could have done a lot better here, and I could have done a lot more there. But I think a lot of people go through that when they get older. And I'm happy because I feel I'm just lucky to be alive.
I have spoken with a lot of gentlemen your age, and they have always been very reticent to talk about their experiences in the war. And I'm wondering why, my father-in-law being one of those individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there a reticence to talk about the experience?
Well, in a war, only a certain percentage are in combat, and there's a whole lot of backup, and possibly a certain person didn't have any real spooky experiences or difficult, and plus there's always a feeling among many of us that we could have done more, and there are occasions where you think, gee, if I'd only done that, except that the chances of being alive and the chances of it meaning much weren't that great. A lot of people who have really had a position or got in a situation where they did a lot in the war don't want to just talk about themselves because they feel like it's immodest, and that's another reason. I don't have that situation. My things were more unusual events and very, very close calls, and very dramatic. So I don't mind talking about that, except that in some cases I get very, very emotional.
Could I ask you a question, and you feel free to not answer it if I've overstepped my boundaries, but were you actually on the beach at Normandy?
Yes, but it was the second day, and I wasn't in any great danger, although later on in Normandy, a shell landed right below my feet in the gun pit and killed or wounded everybody in the gun pit, and I didn't even get a scratch, and the shell was 3 feet from my feet. But on Omaha Beach, where most of the fatalities were, by far, it was the experience of seeing all of those young guys piled up who didn't really have a chance to do anything, many of whom never even fired a shot, and they were just walking right into to death for several hours there. I think about it every day.
Well, thank you for having me in your lovely garden.
Oh, it's a pleasure. A pleasure.